Hello and welcome to Upper Pen. My name is Dakota, and today I am again talking with Valerie Valdes, author of Where Peace is Lost, which is out tomorrow. So thank you so much for being here.
Oh no, thank you so much for having me again. It's good to see you.
Can you give a little bit of a rundown of what is going on and Where Peace is Lost?
So, Where Peace is Lost is the story of Kelgarda, who is a former, I say soldier, that's not quite the right name for it, but we'll say knight, former knight turned refugee. Her people lost a war against a giant empire, and she went into hiding afterwards for very good reasons and has been in hiding for a while, but the planet that she has taken refuge on is now being threatened by one of the Empire's giant robots that is just kind of lumbering inexorably towards destruction. And so she is roped into helping to stop this robot from harming the people that live there.
So in the very beginning, Kel is very quiet. So she definitely lets the character Luna take over and do all of the talking, which is
Oh yeah,
fantastic.
absolutely. Yeah, I wanted her to be Kel's to be a very stoic character, and of course, over the course of the book, she comes out of her shell more. She talks more, and that's part of kind of her arc and her growth. Luna, they from jump are just they are the person who will walk into a crowd and start talking to everyone and get people to talk to them about their life stories. And they are just a ray of sunshine, chipper, cheerful, total contrast to Kel, who is again very kind of reticent, withdrawn, stoic, unwilling to share her feelings. Luna is, I think there's a line in the book, something along the lines of the like, Luna's mother says that there is just no gap between their brain and their mouth. It just if Luna is awake, Luna is talking.
Yes. Around that time, she Luna says something to the effect of um she they are trying to tell Savi that they need to put on like cream,
Oh yeah.
and if they don't, Luna's gonna catch flies in her mouth. So
Yeah.
even they'll be quiet then. So
Oh yeah. Yeah, yeah. No, it's very much just like again, contrasting to Kel. And I love writing those kinds of characters. I love people who are just unabashedly cheerful and talkative and open and earnest. And I love representing them in fiction, and I love kind of contrasting them with the other people around them, but not in a disrespectful way, not in a mean or hurtful way, just in a this is how they are and everyone loves them kind of way.
well, Luna's so great because I really feel like they are um like on the cusp of doing something with their life, right? Going off and starting to be
Mhm.
somebody.
Mhm.
And Kel is like, yeah, I need to not be anybody for a while.
Yes, yes. It's so when I was originally conceiving this story, I did this very intentionally. My one of my original inspirations was Obi-Wan Kenobi. So this notion of somebody who it was within, part of a war, fighting this war. Um, he was a general. I Kel had similar position, but in a very different kind of context. But also there's overlap between the people that Kel is part of in the Jedi, and and so this notion of, she has also hidden herself away for years, trying to avoid capture, trying to protect her people in that way. And Luna is very Luke Skywalker then by contrast. Luke, I think, has a little bit more cynicism to temper his naivete. He has not been exposed to the greater world, but he's desperate to be. And Luna does, I think, share that with him a bit. Like they want to get out there, they want to explore the universe. And so in that way, they are sort of the farm boy character. But at the same time, the farm boy character is always the chosen one and always the one who's the center of everything. And I feel like while Luna is maybe the heart of this story, it's they're not the main character. It's that this is a journey that they go on that they are participating in, but their own journey is a very different one.
Yeah, and um Luna's very much the impetus for the beginning of the story.
Yes.
So they want to go to a large council meeting to
Mhm.
discuss what's going to happen about this giant robot that suddenly sprung to life.
Yeah, absolutely.
um and then that's where we get to meet Savvy and Dare, which are
Yes.
also very
Yeah. Yeah, the Savvy and Dare. So initially, of course, it's very suspicious timing, right? You have these two mercenaries who have arrived on this planet just in the nick of time, promising to help everyone with this mysterious war machine problem that has manifested. And so Kel naturally is very suspicious of this entire situation. It's very sus. They are among us. And so, like, her response to this is to feel this natural inclination to go along for the ride, but at the same time, Kel does not want to insert herself in this problem. She wants to, again, continue to remain aloof, continue to remain apart. And so, in that way, it's a very sort of hero's journey setup, and that you have someone who is internally trying to refuse the call. The call is very literally made by Luna, who, of course, immediately volunteers to do the thing because Luna is all about the adventure. Luna is ready to go. But because Kel is slid into closer of a mentor figure in the typical hero's journey format, um, she's in a different situation perceptually, but she does still fill that hero's journey role of, okay, here's a quest. I'm going to refuse the quest. I don't want to do this quest. This is a huge mistake. But in some ways, Kel is also a very kind of like Superman character. She knows that she is capable of helping to solve this problem, and perhaps, honestly, much more capable than everyone else around her. And that's not to denigrate the people there, but there is a kind of asymmetry to the power levels here. She is from a group that is just much more powerful in terms of their abilities, their weaponry, and so on. And that is not to say that the people there aren't perfectly capable of handling themselves. This is just a situation where they're sort of not. They can do their best, but she is very worried about whether they will be able to handle it.
Yeah, there's also this question about whether the people on the planet are willing to do something in case it might damage the planet because they're very protective of it, right?
Yeah, and that is something that I found really important. There was a really great essay by Sloan Leong that I don't have the name of it handy, but I think it was called The Nature of a Natural Future, if I'm remembering correctly. And it may be that that's a different one by someone else that I'm just remembering the title of and accidentally misattributing. But nevertheless, so Sloan wrote this really amazing essay about how in so many depictions of futures and far futures and long times ago in a galaxy far, far away, the natural world is something that is treated as very sort of distinct and separate by the people, by the characters, by the cultures, by the societies. Nature is something that is to be tamed, manipulated, terraformed, altered, controlled. And I wanted to push back against that. There are places in the world right now, which is really awesome, where there are natural features, rivers, mountains, etc., that have legal rights that you are not allowed to pollute in them because they are considered basically a legal entity. And I found that very in keeping with the ethos that I wanted to present in this book, just that notion of a people who had come to this planet not terribly long ago. This is a few hundred years of growth and settlement and so on, but who came here not to be Luddites, not to discard technology, but to live in a very kind of conscious way with their environment rather than against it. And cultivate a lifestyle that supported the planet and that gave the planet rights. And so because of that, then they are very fiercely defensive of the planet's rights and, try to like everything that they do to change the planet, they try to work with it rather than against it. And there are still things that, they will build a road here. They will use flying machines that are not necessarily the best kind, but they do their best, you know what I'm saying? And so it's not something where they are entirely living with nature and abandoning all technology. It's more just they do their absolute best to make sure that the technology is adapted to the environment and is not infringing on it in to the extent possible.
I think one of the really good ways that you did this is their communication devices. Like they aren't allowed to have satellites and towers, right?
Mhm.
Like that's how it
Yeah.
works.
Yeah, with the expectation and by the way, I don't mean to imply that I am a very kind of, granola eating person who necessarily thinks that these things are all dangerous because I also don't want to imply that this is some sort of utopian ideal that we are meant to be aspiring to. Like yes, I do think that we should be better about this, but that isn't to say that I am pretending to an understanding or a belief in particular, I don't think that a cell tower is gonna, ruin my life or whatever. And so I don't want to go that far in asserting anything. But that is the culture of
Yeah.
this group is their attitude is, you know, this is a thing that can cause harm to the native wildlife, and so we're not going to do it. We're going to do as non-invasive a way as possible. And anyway, who cares about being able to talk to people immediately? If you need to, you go to the phone booth and you take care of it, and you don't have to, worry about who you're harming by doing the thing. And likewise, like satellites, no satellites for them. That's not a thing they do. They have just very kind of specific and limited technological things that they allow. And yeah, that's part of what complicates the entirety of this plot, essentially. I did a class yesterday, taught a class where I mentioned that the world building can fill plot holes because you have like, for example, the eagles flying to Mordor thing, why didn't they just? And so the world building can serve to fill those plot holes. Like, why didn't they just fly to where the machine is and take care of it? Well, because the machine would shoot them out of the sky if they did. And then, moreover, if the machine started firing wildly, then it would destroy the planet. It would destroy the wildlife. It would shoot missiles. It would potentially target cities. It would become a much bigger problem than if they sneak up there much more carefully and take a longer time about it. And so, like, figuring out how to fill those potential plot holes in advance, because to me it all made perfect sense. Well, of course they're not going to just fly over there, but to people reading it, they need those questions answered. If it just remains in my head, then that's not going to help anybody to understand.
Um, I I really like that they have this journey over the land though, because then they get to get into like weirder problems with the society.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. And it is a travel journey, right? With
yeah.
travel journey. Wow, way to go, Valerie, way to words. But like it is a story that is a journey, and in that way it feels very fantasy like, right? They're going on this quest and they're going on a trip about it. The true friends along the way, et cetera, et cetera. And but that is the nature of it, is that in being forced to operate in the way that is most typical, because yeah, okay, they have flying machines, but not everyone uses them and they don't use them a lot. It's not even something that is a common practice there because they just live a very different lifestyle. And so slowing it down, having, Savvy and Dare be deeply frustrated by the fact that they have to slow down this much, having asked for a certain amount of money and then realizing they're in deeper than they expected is very funny to me to play that off. And then even Kel, who is an immensely patient person otherwise, is also very frustrated by this prospect, but also kind of defensive about, being committed to living the lifestyle of this chosen home of hers. So
I think it's funny. One of the parts is Saucy Savvy doesn't want to I don't know why I said saucy.
she's kind of saucy. I mean,
A little bit. Savvy sees you call them razor beaks,
Yeah.
and Luna's like, oh, I'll get the tarp and we can all just hide underneath and then they'll just go over us and it'll be fine. And of course Savvy shoots them and it starts a feeding frenzy.
Yep, absolutely. No, Savvy is not a person who is necessarily impulsive, but definitely in that moment was venting some frustrations. And again, to her, there are expedient solutions to problems as opposed to patient solutions to problems. And so in that way, Savvy is a lot more like Ava from my other trilogy. It's like, I'm gonna solve this problem and I'm gonna do it now. Wait, what do you mean I've caused a new problem? It's the it's Jason Mendoza approach to, well, if you light a Molotov cocktail and throw it, then you've got a new problem. And it's like, that's no, it's not what you should do, actually. But Savvy is a smart character, so I don't also want to pretend that she was very frustrated in that moment. And she was like, why are we being so silly about this? It's a bird. You shoot it, the others will fly away.
Yeah, that seems normal, right? Unless it's a pterodactyl and
Yeah.
then you die.
Yeah, yeah. And they weren't large birds, but they were nevertheless very ungood in terms of enemies. Like it turned into extremely like the birds, the Alfred Hitchcock version, but worse.
But actually scary.
Yeah, yeah.
I really like the relationship that Savvy and Luna kind of develop. I think it's so cute.
Yeah, and so I take inspiration from a lot of random places. And so to me, their relationship is very similar to there's a game Dragon Age 2. And there are two characters, Isabella and Meryl. And Isabella is a pirate captain. She is very saucy. She is very she's very into innuendos and just has a very firm attitude. Very, I don't know if bossy is the right word, but she is a woman who is in charge. She's used to being in charge. She's used to telling other people what to do, but also just used to going her own way and being independent and so on and so forth. But definitely very saucy. And Meryl as a character is a very cinnamon roll like Luna and very innocent, very naive, does not pick up on half the innuendos that the other characters drop, and yet is learning, right? Is trying to figure it out. Is for all that. And Luna's sort of the same way. It's like Luna as a character, they are sharp, they are observant, they are naive and sheltered, but that doesn't mean that they aren't going to figure stuff out. And, it's not an intelligence thing. I feel like that's something that happens when someone is very kind of cinnamon roll and sheltered and earnest and naive, is that there is an expectation that they're also foolish somehow. But it usually is just a product of their environment and their upbringing more than anything else. And Luna being raised on this planet, their upbringing has made them more sheltered, but they still have access to, the in-world internet kind of thing. And so it's not that they are totally isolated from everything. This is not an isolationist culture. It is just a culture where people take things slower and do things the way that they do them, basically. But back to Isabella and Meryl. So like that is a sort of dynamic that was playing out here, right? So you have this very feisty pirate captain type, and you have this very like low-key cinnamon roll type. But the thing about Meryl is that she is a blood mage. And so in that sense, there is that contradiction there. And I like that about Luna as well, is that again, even though Luna, they are sheltered, they are kind of living in this planet away from the center of the galaxy, but they still know stuff. They're an engineer. They're amazing at what they do, and they pick up things quickly. And so there is that balance between them is this jaded, world weary person versus this sort of isolated, cheerful person. And I love throwing those character archetypes together. Love it.
I really enjoyed it too. So when we first meet Savvy, I was really expecting her to be like the tough piratey, like in your face kind of person
Mhm.
because she's poking at Kel throughout the whole
Yes.
beginning, and
Oh yeah.
it's quite funny because she's like, "Ha, I got you."
Yeah. And Savvy is, um, I think that more than being brash, like I think that, for example, contrasting her with Ava, Ava is more, I guess, outspoken is the word. She just doesn't take crap from people, and um, her response to problems is usually very bull in a china shop. And Savvy, on the other hand, Savvy is manipulative. Savvy definitely is very charm offensive. And so if they were like Dungeons and Dragon characters, Ava does not have a lot of charisma, honestly. Like when it comes down to it, she uses a lot of like violence to solve problems. She jokes that people keep asking her violent questions, and that's why violence is the answer. Um, but Savvy, on the other hand, tries to be more charming. She absolutely tries to kind of twist people not just into liking her, but into giving her information. Because I feel like every character in a story, just like every person, has fears kind of underpinning their existence. And one of Savvy's fears is having insufficient information on which to, form a plan, basically. And Savvy doesn't like secrets, except for her own, of course, which she guards jealously. But knowledge is power to her. And so she is always going to be trying to collect as much information as possible about the people around her because it gives her not just more data on which to base her decisions and formulate plans, but it also gives her a lever. And she is the kind of person who is always looking for everyone's lever to be able to manipulate them just a little better. And Kel definitely is not here to give Savvy a lever initially, and well, ever really. But of course, Savvy does eventually kind of figure things out to the extent that she's able to apply pressure at key points.
It also, I think Dare really comes in here too because Dare makes Kel kind of more open.
Yeah, yeah. And so another trope that I really love, people will talk about, enemies to lovers and friends to lovers and this and that. And in the same way that I love opposites attract in the way of Savvy and Luna, I also really love when like meets like. And that is very much Kellen Dare. They have different experiences that turn them into very different people, but at the same time, their sort of cores, their fundamental cores, are pretty similar to each other. There is a lot of alignment there. Whenever you're setting up a romance or relationship, I feel like there have to be those kinds of points of contact where the people have overlap, where they have, you know, at a minimum like tangent points where they touch each other so that there is something on which to build the relationship because if there's nothing there there's nothing there and that's when you're kind of like I don't buy this at all, this doesn't make sense, I don't know why these people would like each other actually. And so there has to be something, and they are very similar people just in terms of like both kind of reserved, both hiding secrets, both have traumatic pasts that they are attempting to deal with in their own distinct ways. And as they're coming together and as they're sort of opening up to each other, um, Kel is the one who has, I will say, a less traumatic upbringing and history on which to base her ability to extend, the hand of friendship and understanding, so to speak. Whereas Dare, because he has had a much more traumatic life and upbringing and recent history, he is intensely and immediately suspicious of any of these overtures toward friendship. But he is nevertheless, I mean, he wants to be loved, honestly. And it is one of those situations where he can't love himself very well. And so, because of that, it's hard for him to believe that anyone else can. He is just he has his own reasons for being very suspicious of other people, and for his own kind of self-loathing that he carries around with him. But Kel does her best, again, coming from just a better and sort of healthier background overall. She has more tools to deal with this situation, but it also makes her a little sheltered too in her responses and in her approaches. She is meeting him on a particular level when it is in fact not the level that he needs to be met on, certainly, and she has to figure that out for herself.
It really feels like they both kind of have PTSD,
Yeah.
and Kel maybe was prepared a little for the PTSD, and Dare was definitely not.
Absolutely. And I mean, I think that that is a cultural thing, right? People from different cultures and different backgrounds, and when I say cultures, they're kind of like concentric circles, right? You have the larger culture, and within that culture, you have the different groups, the different cliques, in and different friendship circles and so on. You can kind of keep narrowing that down to neighborhoods and families and overlapping peer groups and so on and so forth. But Kel, again, just she came from a much healthier place, that was nonetheless then harmed, destroyed, taken from her. And Dare, on the other hand, did not come from a healthy place from jump. And so he does not have the same sort of suite of tools that she has to deal with the feelings and the problems and attempt to recover. And that's not to say that Kel has done a great job, by the way. Again, not putting her up as a paragon of mental health here, but she definitely does have more and better tools to deal with the situation. And I think sometimes what can happen, and this is a danger of having a sort of good and robust mental health system that you can rely on in this economy. But you even having those tools, sometimes it can give you a just a little bit more of a sense of like, I should be able to fix this because I have the tools. And then when you
Yeah.
can't fix it, you maybe feel additional shame and guilt and so I think that sometimes when people have that kind of strong mental health structure, they can minimize their problems because they feel like they have more control over them somehow. And I think that that is a place where Kel lives, where it's like, I am okay. I don't have problems. I have all of this stuff that I have used to make myself better. And it's like, honey, you're living in a one-room building in a swamp. No, what you're doing is not healthy. You're not dealing with your problems. You're running away from them, and that's not good either. You think what you're doing makes sense, but actually, and this is the story is also the journey of her, but actually, and figuring stuff out.
I think what you do really well here is so Kel is isolated for a lot of the book, and then she finds her community. Like
Mhm.
she's got Luna, but Luna is an example of something she can't be like right now. So
Yeah. Yeah, Luna is very entrenched in their family. Luna has a
yeah.
big family. Luna lives in this village that they've lived in their entire life. And, Luna and their family travel around to different villages for trade fairs and various other, celebrations, whatever. But they have a very kind of like robust community existence. And I think that the questions of community versus isolation are very important to us these days in society. This is definitely a book that I had planned in a particular way and then sort of modified my plan. And as I was writing it during the pandemic, there were definitely things that were very uh, in foremost in my mind, shall we say. And I think that um, there are aspects of society for us in the United States today, and I don't want to speak for other countries because, of course, I'm not in them and it's none of my business. But we tend to have a kind of an isolationist society, and I think more people are pushing back against that now, maybe than they did a few years ago. And this is all just my perception, so I could be totally wrong. But a lot of the way our society is designed is sort of isolationist. You live in an apartment building, but you're living in the apartment building either by yourself or with some roommates. You live with your parents who live in a house or an apartment, and again, they're kind of separate from people. And you drive your car to work by yourself. You take public transit, but you don't talk to anyone on the public transit if you have to take it. And honestly, there are many parts of this country for which public transit is nonsense. And so again, it's very like you get up, you in your apartment by yourself, you drive to work in your car by yourself, you work in a cubby by yourself, and then you go home and eat your, TV dinner by yourself. And again, that is a one particular kind of existence that I'm portraying essentially in the form of Kel, but it is something that happens to us and something that our society has built up into a way of existing that is very common for a lot of people. Instead of having life centered much more around community, around that sort of, people working together, doing things together, supporting each other. Instead of communal meals, we have TV dinners. Instead of boarding houses where a lot of people live together in one place, we have individual apartment buildings or roommates that don't talk to each other or whatever. And I mean, again, I'm painting a very bleak picture here, and it is only a very one specific picture, but I think that having community is very important, and I think that people that by contrast, a lot of people are working very hard to create community in various ways, whether it be through clubs, through mutual aid, through various kinds of volunteer work, or hobbies, etc. Like, one of the benefits of the internet is that even if we can't be together physically, we can often be together virtually. And so I think we are in a place where we're starting to really push back against that sort of isolationism, and I'm here for it. And I did want to take Kel sort of through that journey of, here is someone who has been separating herself for a long, long time, thinking that she's doing it for the best of reasons, and her reasons are valid. It's not that they're not, but because she has excised herself from community so completely, and she, as a person who is not naturally that way, she may be the person who goes to the party and sits in the corner quietly, but that isn't to say that she doesn't want to be around other people, and she doesn't want to be helping people, and she doesn't want to be, taking action and volunteering and all that stuff. And so she has essentially cut herself off from all of the positive aspects of a community experience that she needs, honestly, for her own well-being. And, it is just very much, she has put a wall up around herself that needs to come down.
Yeah, and I think most of it is due to the war, right?
Mhm.
So, who are the pale, as everybody calls them?
Yeah, so the Prixorianocracy, aka the Pale, um, they they are sort of your stormtrooper, big empire situation, right? And so they are it came together in a few different places. Like, I don't want to just lean on stormtroopers because that's not it, but I feel like there is a very clinical aspect to some portions of our society and our aesthetic that I wanted to carry through into this culture. And I'm not limiting this. This happens a lot in science fiction, right? Where you have the natural versus the
Yeah.
technological. And I think that there's a bit of that here, certainly, but I did again want to take pains to show that the people on this sort of natural world are nonetheless using technology. It's not that they're avoiding it entirely, but this isn't Ewoks. That's not, we're not going there. But the Pale have definitely embraced an aesthetic of sort of clean lines and whiteness. And they do it, I think, deliberately as an evocation of sort of like bones, basically. And so it is not just the whiteness of sterility that is common to sci-fi aesthetics, which is very valid as an aesthetic. I'm not pooping on it. It works, it does what it does. But to me, it's more that this is a society that is deliberately stripping itself of um and it's ornamented is the thing too. It's not that it's lacking in ornamentation. It's more like Greek statuary, where you find out that once upon a time, all of these beautiful blank marble statues used to be brightly painted. And so the Pale to me is that Greek statuary. It is beautiful. It is, you can admire the artistry of it, and then you realize that it's sort of lacking color. And it's a deliberate choice on their part in some ways. It's a traditional and cultural choice in other ways that there's, the inertia of tradition keeps people in a certain path. But in the same way that with the stormtroopers, the idea is, yeah, you're seeing this kind of blank face coming towards you. That is creepy AF. And so you're going to respond to that viscerally, emotionally, this faceless nobody who is coming after you. I mean, it also is a way of reducing their shock troops to non-entities. It is not a person coming at you. It is the Pale. It is the full weight of this empire as opposed to any individuals. And so it is like for their military specifically, that stripping of individuality is an important component of the training, as opposed to, again, the way that Kel's people worked, which is very different. And so I wanted to set up those contrasts, not just between the people on the planet where she's living now, but also this vast empire that is sort of slowly trying to bring in other, planets under their jurisdiction. Empire in some ways is like a virus that spreads and spreads and spreads. And in some ways, it's like a pyramid scheme. You have to keep spreading because otherwise it's going to fall apart. And honestly, that is where this empire is right now. And that's sort of part of the situation here. Um, this is also an examination of a microcosm of how this empire is starting to crumble, because that sort of empire disintegration doesn't occur rapidly, right? In so many films and stuff, we want to believe like, oh, and then they have a space battle about it, and then the empire is done. The emperor is dead. Everything is over, and now it's democracy. That's super duper not how it works. Not on a localized level, and certainly not at a vast galactic level where you have a lot of planets and cultures and people, disparate people involved. There's just no way. There's no way, first of all, for an empire to effectively control so many places. And it's also impossible for the empire to easily dissolve and disintegrate based on one single thing. But we have seen empires rise and fall, and we do know that it does occur asymmetrically and it does occur over a period of time. There are flashpoints, there are moments that we can look at and say, ah, yes, this was a big deal as part of this collapse of the empire. But it's a lot of little things coming together that tend to bring those things down.
I think at one point you mentioned that the Pale is overreached,
Yes.
um, which is really an important part because like they have so many people now fighting them, but
Exactly. And that's, the construction of the Pale military apparatus is something that I thought a lot about and how I wanted to do it. And it plays into different character situations that I'm trying not to do spoilery things here, but
I
like
know.
um, but the way that the Pale constructs their military force is very different from the way that a lot of other people construct their military forces. And that is even on our actual real life planet, right? We have a lot of different examples of militaries throughout history and how they've constructed themselves. And and so in some ways, this is a very Roman Empire kind of thing, and they've got their different groups and squadrons and stuff, and they of course have robots of various sizes and shapes that they deploy to greater or lesser efficiency. Did not get into like the drone warfare side of things or planetary, orbital bombardment or any of that. And certainly in the same way that we have treaties and restrictions that ostensibly people are meant to follow on this planet, they have restrictions as well in terms of what they can and can't do and how they can approach stuff. But um, it's a situation where like you look to these examples and you think, okay, what do I want to do here, and what do I want to say about these different structures and systems and how they work and how they fall apart and fail. And yeah, I put a lot of that thinking into this book.
I think the world building is so layered here, and it makes a lot of sense to start on just this one planet with this one. Um, to me, it's an AT-AT in my head.
Yeah, yeah, it's a similar kind of design, right? Where it's just like a giant walking robot thing, and it's a thing that people can be inside as well,
Yeah.
right? Where it's like it can carry troops, shock troops, or just the people operating it, or it can be basically autonomous or semi-autonomous, operated remotely kind of thing. So yeah, it's versatile in that sense. I feel like I love the tech level of Star Wars in the sense that part of me is like, who on earth would build a robot like with legs? That seems
Yeah.
just make it fly. Like, what are you doing? It's kind of like the Daleks in Doctor Who, right? Where it's like, oh, they can't stairs, my nemesis, and then you finally hit the episode where like, obviously we have little rockets that can help us go
Right.
upstairs. Like, you think that we can travel through space and time and not handle stairs? Like, really? Um, but yeah, I feel like there are the notion of shock and awe is something that I think sometimes we forget about in the interests of being efficient or smart, quote unquote, about things. And so it's like, yeah, drone warfare really would be the way to go. You just throw a bunch of drones at somebody and, blow them into Kingdom Come. But like, that's not actually a great way to wage war depending on your goals and your desired outcome. And shock and awe is something that I'm not going to repeat the phrase again because in some ways I find it very distasteful, and the person who uttered it, I believe, also pretty distasteful. But that notion, again, going back to their uniforms and sort of the faceless non-entities that they present themselves as, they want people to feel that this is, an overwhelming force coming for them as a single unit. This is the arm of the Pale that is coming at them. And giant robots honestly factor into that in my mind. If you see a giant robot coming towards you shooting lasers and missiles, you are going to feel a way about it.
Yeah, yeah. I'm gonna go the other way, really.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And at that point, it's kind of like, surrender. Surrender sounds good, maybe. Yeah, we'll do that one. Um, so yeah.
I just love the idea that the Pale was fighting this huge war and then just left stuff, right?
Yeah.
It's so real.
Yeah, and the thing is that you have the cost benefit analysis, right? On the one side, it's like this is valuable technology. Why would they just leave it here? But on the other side, they're dealing with crap in so many fronts, in so many places, and the stuff that they left, like I tried to be clear that this was not necessarily in good working order, so to speak. And so it's kind of like, yeah, they could send someone here to scavenge all of this for parts and to retrieve the parts that they want to use somewhere else. But ultimately, it's like, is it worth it to them? Is it worth, getting these robots and moving them somewhere else? Or is it better to just get new robots, use the drones, do something different? And so this planet is basically one of their storage sheds. It's not even one of their planets because they don't want to accept any of the responsibilities of having to like ostensibly take care of it. So they just have this kind of agreement that these people only signed because they didn't want to lose their autonomy. They in their perception, again, they're trying to protect this planet, right? So the agreement is, no satellites, no weird monitoring stuff, but you can basically come and visit your shed whenever you need to, and in return, you will not conquer us. Um, Whether that paper would even hold water is, like, well, is this a contract written with a fork on water? Yeah, but again, the people who signed it went in with their eyes open, understanding this because they're not fools. Just, the fact that they are isolated and intentionally living in a particular way does not make them not understand galactic politics. But they also then understand that their options are constrained and they are doing their best, basically. And if their best means that Hale have this one shed way far in the north, um, then it is what it is.
There's just so much to this book, and then there's so much I don't want to talk about
I
because it
know,
quickly gets
spoilers.
into spoilers. But is there anything that we haven't touched that you want to talk about?
Um, I don't, yeah, again, it's just there's so much spoilery stuff that and I know everyone has a different latitude for spoilers, so it's kind of
I
like some
know.
people, yeah, some people are like, just tell me the thing, stop being so coy about it, whatever. But I I really did want this to be also kind of a meditation on violence because that's something that was very much in the zeitgeist at the time that I was starting to conceive of this book. You know, I wrote the Chilling Effect trilogy, which again is a trilogy of a character who is very frequently involved in violent altercations. Um, and it's not that she doesn't know how to solve problems without violence, but Ava is capable of violence, and it seems as if she constantly gets backed into these violent situations. Um, and she is self-reflective about that a little bit, but I wanted this book to be much more conscious of that situation. The main character is this former knight, part of a group that, again, closer to a Jedi sort of setup, right? Like I don't want to pretend that she's a Jedi because the Jedi are a mess. We're not even going to get into what a mess the Jedi are, but they absolutely are a giant mess. But like I wanted to structure a group that is has a martial component, but that is nonetheless founded and rooted in not fighting, but aid, humanitarian aid. And there is a group that, when I was sort of looking for examples of this, I found the Knights Hospitaller. And I'm not going to oversell how great they were because I know the answer is no. They were contemporaneous, more or less, with the Knights Templar, who also hot mess. My gosh, religious crusades. Let us not pretend that anything great happened there. Um, but but the Knights Hospitaller started as a hospital. It literally was some people in Jerusalem made a hospital. And the hospital eventually was, you know, and hospital, not just hospital in the modern sense, but also like a hostel, as in pilgrims who were going to visit Jerusalem could stay there. People who needed medical care could get the medical care there. And it expanded ultimately to include a martial arm whose job was to help escort these pilgrims to Jerusalem to protect them along the way from bandits and whatnot. Um, and I liked that. I liked the idea that you have an organization that originally developed as a humanitarian aid organization, as a group that made hospitals, made schools, went around, you know, building houses for people, helping after disasters, you know, and I wanted that sort of ethic of care to be the core of this group. And the existence and evolution of the martial arms of the group were as a result of that ethos meeting reality, where, yeah, no, other people are violent. Other people do engage in violence, and so do they, honestly. Like, again, we're not going to put these people on a pedestal and pretend like every single one of them was great and wonderful and above such petty concerns. But it is a society that does more closely align with like a Superman kind of character in terms of these are people who want to do good and be good and treasure hospitality and treasure aid and helping others, and that is sort of the core of what they are trying to accomplish. But then when that society meets other cultures that are unscrupulous, cultures that are invested in expansion and conquering and assimilation, as opposed to the sort of ethic of care, then what happens is inevitably not good. Even if you are engaged in a vigorous defense of your home and your people, um, you know, the violence that happens, even if it is self-defense, even if that is sort of an inevitable product of existing in a reality with unscrupulous people who have who don't have that same ethic of care and don't have that same concern about defaulting to violence, um, you you still have to live with the consequences and you have to live with yourself. And
Yeah.
so there is a point in the book where Kel remembers someone telling her it's like violence is always a failure, but sometimes we have to choose between different failures because success is not going to happen. And I think about that a lot because I think that one of the tools of oppression is to deprive the oppressed of tools, and violence is a tool. And so, in order to maintain control over the oppressors will often then try to deprive the oppressed of that tool of violence, because it is when you are in a very asymmetrical system, as in this book, where if these people decided they were going to go fight this robot, they would get slaughtered. They would die. They would simply die. And so we have to deal with harsh realities like that when we're thinking about these things. But at the same time, like taking that tool out of the toolbox is a way to perpetuate oppression. And I'm not here to talk about like we all need to rise up and pull out the guillotines, but but not having the ability to protect yourself in that sort of in a way that ultimately is a form of violence. I think that is a form of continuing oppression. And so again, not here to tell everyone they need to go fight people, but sometimes you have to punch Nazis. Like really, that's kind of what it comes down to, right? Is if you want to place yourself above it and be nonviolent, I'm here for you. I support you, but sometimes you have to punch Nazis.
I support this nonprofit called Stronghold Relief and Rescue, where their whole mission is they go into conflict zones and help people get out, but also
Yeah.
administer aid. Or
Yes.
like in Myanmar, they were teaching people how to defend themselves against people trying to kill them,
Mhm.
and teaching people how to give aid. And that feels like what this is.
Yeah, no, it's like if you have a protest march at this point, one of the natural things you collect is medics because you're
Yeah.
gonna need them. Because unfortunately, again, like the jackboot will come down on your neck and somebody needs to be standing by to render assistance.
Yeah.
And I wanted to try, and I don't know if I succeeded, but I wanted to try to represent a group that was centered on sort of being the medics, but then also being the shields.
Yeah. I mean, I think those people are very, very necessary. So I'm just going to leave it at that. Is there a book two coming?
There is not a book two under contract. I am attempting to put together the stuff to try to sell a book two and three, but I cannot promise anything, alas. And I definitely tried to design this book to be standalone so that if there is no book two and three, then you will not be disappointed. You will merely be like, oh, it might be nice if there was more, but at least it had closure.
I just love the universe and the types of people that are here, and I want to see more of who you populate with this universe.
Yeah, no, and I mean, I've talked about a lot of big stuff, I think, here and in other places in terms of empire collapse and, resistance, guerrilla warfare, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that I haven't watched all of Andor, but like the notion of a sort of rebel class. I haven't also seen Rebels either. I've seen some of Rebels, same deal. But when you have an oppressive regime, you will always have rebels. You will always have resistance. And whether those people are engaged in active conflict as opposed to simply other methods of undermining the empire, you can stand on the ground and shoot at someone, or you can dig tunnels. And like I feel like digging tunnels is a very successful means of trying to undermine these structures that are bad and wrong and need to be replaced. And that's something that did not get to happen here because this is very much kind of that opening chapter, so to speak, in the life of Kel as a rebel. But I do have thoughts and plans and ideas of forms of rebellion that I would love her to participate in.
Well, I'm excited, and I did read your short story and Fit for the Gods, and
Oh yeah.
I loved it so much.
Oh yeah, no, that one was a lot of fun too. Like that was one where I knew I wanted to write well, you know what? Let me back up. I was trying to figure out which character I wanted to write. I wasn't entirely sure. And then I was like, "Oh, Atalanta. I've always loved Atalanta. Like there's always been to me just this notion of strong women characters, as you probably have guessed, is a thing that appeals to me immensely. And the thing about Atalanta that I never super loved was this notion that she would agree to this derby contest that her father was all about. And so to me, I was like, I'm gonna write a fix it fic about it, more or less. It's like I'm gonna make this make sense to me. Her father has nothing to do with it. Forget that guy. She's her own woman. And you know, she loses on purpose because she likes this guy. And she's like, yeah, we're gonna get married about it. And initially, I think Mike is I was like, this is a joke. She's joking, but also unless. And then it was, you know, and then they got married and they had a lovely, lovely existence together until Poop hits fans. But, you know,
Yeah.
you make out in the wrong office
Office.
and
Yeah.
suddenly, and by the way, that came straight out of the myth. Like the end of the Atalanta myth is that she and her husband do do the dirty in a temple and get
Yeah.
caught and get turned into lions. And yeah, whoopsie doodle. Yeah, you know, the gods don't love it when you do that in their temples. There's, you know, miasma or whatever there.
What I don't get though is it's supposed to be a punishment, the two of them becoming lions together, but they're together and like lions mate for life. So like they're together. That was the point.
I was it Ovid? There was some belief apparently that I guess modern scholars are viewing very skeptically, as they should. It's like, oh no, but people at the time thought that lions didn't mate, so it was basically them being sentenced to never have sex again. I was like, they did they think that? No, they didn't. Are you No. Why do modern people think that ancients were extremely derpy? I don't get it. I am sorry. You read like on the nature of things by Lucretius, and it's like, nah, this guy figured out atoms 2,000 years ago. There's no way. Like they didn't think lions had sex. Are you kidding me? They weren't reproducing by budding. Like what the hell? So I don't know. I read that at one point and I was like, no, I don't.
Yeah,
Mm-mm.
it's
I
quite
don't trust
silly.
this. Yeah, no, I don't think so. But yeah, that's why I their last name in the story is Leon because I was like, this is a little nod to that situation. I mean, the whole thing's a nod to the situation. They definitely got busy in the wrong place and got punished for it.
And they took the chair, so it's
And they
fine.
took the chair. Yeah, it all worked out. But they, you know, they gave her a new chair, so it's fine. But yeah, and then because it's Atalanta, I wanted it to be a space race story, and
Yeah.
so fished around for cool stuff. Was researching things within our solar system, and came upon the Noctis Labyrinthus on Mars, which is basically just a maze of giant cliffs. And I was like, that's where you have a space race on a planet with giant cliff maze.
Well, it was a fantastic short story, and you know, I loved it. I want to read more of your short stories, so I'm
Yeah,
scouring the internet.
if you go to Uncanny Magazine, I have a story there, in Time a Weed May Break Stone, and that one is very similar to Kel's story in the sense of here is a person who has retired from fighting after a war and is just trying to live her life when a robot shows up, basically. And it's fantasy, so it's a fantasy, it's a golem, basically. I shouldn't even use that term because it's a construct. Golem is a very specific thing, but yeah, it's a crystal construct that is dangerous and somebody's got to do something about it. And of course, it's the main character.
Of course. And yeah, so I Kel is like the perfect character to be thrust into shenanigans. So
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. Because again, she is very interested in protecting, but at the same time, her desire to protect is um complicated by her history and her fears about that history coming to light in ways that would make her protection worse. It's again, it's a very kind of like Superman style, like I want to help people, but if I do, this other bad thing could happen, and then what? Um, so yeah.
well, Where Peace is Lost is out tomorrow, so everybody should go buy a copy if you haven't already pre-ordered yours, like I did mine.
And yeah, I'll be doing a book release thing on Twitch if anyone feels like dropping in.
Mm.
I'm planning to make some vegan Biscoff cupcakes that I've never made before. I know.
Okay.
We're gonna find out how they turn out. I'm usually a chocolate cake girl. I'm good at the chocolate cake, but we're gonna see how the Biscoff. I love Biscoff.
Could be good. Could be really good. Could be weird.
We'll
So
find out. Cookie
well,
butter
thank you.
cupcakes.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining me again, Valerie.
No, thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
And I, like I said, I love Where Peace is Lost, so I think everybody should go buy it, and then Valerie can sell the next one, right? So,
Please, yes. I have more stories to tell, more things, more nights, more shenanigans.
well, have a great day, and I'll catch you in the next one.